hurricanes, wildfires, earthquakes, blizzards. There's something in your area that can happen very, very quickly that you're going to need to be prepared for. As you probably know and have seen with your own eyes from the last few major natural disasters, help doesn't come immediately. It takes time. How long it takes depends on your state and how good your state agencies are and your local agencies are. Because the federal agencies are pretty much worthless. Now, that's excluding DOD's efforts. Everybody else, they'll get here eventually. But you need to have yourself covered for a few days, depending on the type of disaster, because they're not going to be here right away. Now, here we are a week into it. I've still yet to see FEMA. I saw one Red Cross truck. The only federal agency that I have actually seen was Border Patrol, and they were getting out. They were leaving. We are not the sons of the pioneers and the daughters of Rosie the Riveter anymore, because we're not going to fix the problem ourselves. We're going to wait for somebody else to do it. Wait for government, Big Daddy government. The pioneers, right? That's what we like to cast ourselves as. We're Americans, the sons of the pioneers. Are we anymore? Or have we had it so good for so long that we've forgotten what that is? And we've become afraid of everything. Everything. If government could help, if government could really solve the problems, I wouldn't be running supplies in from 30 or 40 miles away. You can't count on the government response. You can't. In fact, some of the things that your government agencies may do will make it worse for you. Putting together a kit, a bag for emergencies is something that every family should do. It doesn't matter if you're a soccer mom or you're an ex-ranger. You need to stay up to date and you need to have your stuff together. And this is for everybody. This isn't for survivalists. This isn't for preppers. This is for everybody. It doesn't take long. It's not a big process. We're not talking about building a bunker and preparing for doomsday. We're just talking about enough to survive a week or two until things normalize. Okay, so the first thing, water, most important thing. Okay, I would say 2 gallons of water per person per day, however long you expect to be without help. And I know people are saying, no, well, you don't really need that much. You can survive on a lot less. You can. You can survive on a lot less than that. However, you're going to want to cook. You may be able to flush your toilet if you dump water into it. You may need to clean a wound. You may want to wash your hands. You're going to need water. Get gallon jugs, or if you have, like a Culligan thing at your house, get some extra 5-gallon things. Keep it on hand. People think that, I've got a case of Dasani at the house, that's enough. It's not. It's not even close to enough. You're going to burn through that so fast. Make sure you have water. Aside from that, you can also get tablets to purify water. You can get filters, which are really cool, like the Life Straw or the Sawyer. Food. Now, when you think emergency and food, you think MREs, meals ready to eat, used by the Army. Do you need those? No. Of course not. Get canned goods, get rice, get things that last a really long time, that are things you wouldn't normally eat, and that they have a long shelf life, because then you can put them in your pantry and they'll stay there, because you're not going to be like, ooh, I really want to eat that. No, it's just going to hang out. That way you have a backup food supply. And again, you're not looking for the tastiest thing in the world, you're just looking for something that will keep you alive and that is easy to cook. And because you're doing that, you also need a can opener, a first aid kit, a good one, okay? Not the blue box you pick up at Walmart that says 153 pieces and 148 of them are different size Band-Aids. If it can be fixed with a Band-Aid, it probably would have fixed itself on its own. Then you also need your meds. If you are on meds of any kind that you have to take regularly, you need a supply of those in this bag, because pharmacies aren't going to be open. And then obviously if you have pets, you need food for them, their meds if they need any, water for them as well. Fire, and fire includes a flashlight, and you need to know how to build a fire. You need lighters, you need fire strikers, that type of thing. Matches, waterproof matches would be great. Then you need shelter. You need to assume that the structure you're in is going to be damaged. Okay. Tarps, if you don't want to go out and spend a bunch of money on a tent, tarps or those little mylar, the silver blankets, they're not great, but they work. A knife, a multi-tool, like a Leatherman or something like that, and you can even get a cheap one. It's got a knife on it, but it also has pliers and a can opener. You know you're going to need that. It has all of those other things. A Swiss Army knife. The last thing is a battery-operated AM, FM, weather would be great, radio. The internet's going to be down. You're not going to get reliable news except through the radio. When relief does come, you're going to find out about the pickup points to get supplies via the radio or from somebody else who has a radio. Go ahead and get your own. Make sure you have plenty of batteries for all of this stuff. People say, I have all this stuff in my house. That's great, but after the hurricane or the earthquake or whatever, are you going to be able to find it? Keep it all together. Beyond that, you need an evacuation plan. You need to know where you're going to go, and then you need a backup for that evacuation plan. In addition to all of this stuff, anybody that's going to use it, anybody that's part of the plan, needs to know what the plan is. You need to know where you're going to meet up in a secondary location in case you can't meet up at the first one. Then you need to have the evac location, the place you're going to go to if you can't shelter in place, and then a second one. And everybody needs to know about this. If you have this stuff, you're able to help other people because you're already taken care of. And in a situation like this, it's just your community. This is being on an airplane and putting your mask on before you put the person next to you, before you help them put their mask on. Just take care of this stuff and you're going to be able to help people. There are people who will come to help, but the more self-reliant you are, the less stress you're putting on them because they can focus on those people who could not help themselves. We're in a small town, and my 2-year-old spots a fire truck sitting out in front of the fire station, and he loves them. And he's about ready to crawl out the window. He said, "Oh, rescue team!" Then he notices that the fire station's damaged. He's like, "Oh no, rescue team's hurt. Who's gonna help?" My 4-year-old doesn't miss a beat. Us. And that's why I take them. That is why I take them. You can't tell a kid to be a good person. You got to show them. 4-year-old understands that at some point and at some times it's just us. There is no big daddy government coming to help you. Here's the thing, guys. It's up to you. It is up to you. If not you, who? Who's going to solve the problems? If it's not you. You personally. Not your representative. You. You got a problem in your community? Fix it. Do it yourself. Do not wait for a leader. Don't wait for some savior to arrive. Don't be afraid. Put out the flame with your foot. Get involved. You want to make America great? It isn't going to happen in D.C. It's going to happen at the local level. It's not a matter of somebody else is going to help it. That may not happen. If not you, who? Make sure that somebody else is helping before you just walk on by. There are people still out there like that. This little supply depot I've been going to, it's at a place called Project Hope Incorporated. Now, under normal circumstances, these guys work with vets, and they use horses. Kind of cool, to kind of provide a cathartic experience. Interesting little concept, and they do good work, according to everybody that I've talked to that has ever had anything to do with them. They've turned their entire facility into a supply depot to help people. And you need to think about that. Supplies coming in to a non-government location. Non-government people getting to where it needs to go. Now, for those who don't think that this is something their kids need to learn, what are the side effects of learning survival skills? You learn to critically think, problem solve, think on your feet, improvisation, self-reliance. These are the side effects. It's worth doing. How do you engage the youth in learning survival skills? We're going to start off with the don'ts, and there's just one. There's just one that I see commonly that people do. Don't try to toughen up your kid. Don't. Just don't. Teach them the skills. Make it fun. If they have to suffer, they just have to suffer. In a survival situation, you don't have to practice how to suffer. So what's the first thing you should do? Get a copy of the U.S. Army Survival Manual and read it. You can buy it at any local bookstore. If you just want to download it, you can get it for free at archive.org. I would suggest getting a hard copy and keeping it just in case. We want to make it fun. Your kid sits around and plays video games all day. Don't yell at him to get off and go outside. What are you playing? Fallout? You want to learn how to do that for real? Play with their interests rather than just trying to hand them a new one. Just find some way to relate it. That's all you have to do. And then it makes it a little bit interesting, and then it's a little less of a problem getting them involved. And then from there, you've read the book. So come up with hip pocket classes, little activities that can be done at the drop of a hat. Organize them ahead of time. Little things that you can do to teach them little bits and pieces of it at a time. So it's not a classroom setting. It's them doing something with you. A good example is you're away from your home. Right now, where can you find food, water, fire, shelter, a knife, and a first aid kit? There are little chemistry sets, STEM sets, where you actually learn to build something. You know, you build a battery, or you start a fire with a chemical reaction, or whatever. Those little things, they're cheap. They're like $5. Get them, do that one. Use that to teach something else along the way. Just make it fun. And for God's sakes, do not try to toughen up your kid. They don't need to be tough physically. They need to be tough mentally. And they'll figure that out along the way. When people start to learn survival skills, they start to look at the world in a very, very different way. They see the impossible as possible. They see what things could be if you looked at them in the right way. And they learn what's really important in life. Supplies are pretty much everywhere. You just have to know where to look and how to think about them. After Michael, there was a group of people that was sheltering in a restaurant, and they needed medical supplies. Nothing major, but they had an injury. It never occurred to them that there was a first aid kit in the kitchen because they were up in the front of the house. There was a first aid kit. There was what they needed 15 feet away. But we're so used to that consumer life that if we didn't buy it, it doesn't exist type of thing, that they never thought about it. Prior to Michael, I watched two people argue over water in a store. And they were between a display of Gatorade and a cooler full of Milo sweet tea. If you were just looking for something cheap to flush your toilet, the sweet tea would have worked. If you were looking for something potable water, the Gatorade would have worked. But people get in that mindset of, I have to get water. No, you have to get something wet. Beyond that, it teaches you to improvise. And that's one of the most important skills in life, in my opinion. It's one of those things that lets you see what things could be rather than what they are. And when you do that, you start to see everything around you, this is a battery if you can't tell, as components rather than some finished consumer product. You learn to improvise. And when you do that, you learn to see the world in a different way, because things can be something else. I think it's really important for the youth of today to learn survival skills for that reason. Because I think with everything going on in the world today, it might be really important for them to understand that the impossible is possible. And that the way things are isn't what they have to be. That they can change it. That they can use the tools around them to make something else. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good night.